young
here.
when you're young, free and single, you do as you like.
We're not challenging that now. We're not to compete. It's like that.
We're
Good
on.
evening and welcome to this edition of Mek We Chat. Caught out as usual, misbehaving from the start. You have people like Margaret Francis. God can't keep this one quiet. Beverley Sinclair. Catherine there in London. And George, your
mic is live. We could hear
mic
you.
is live. And we also have Athie, who has joined us all the way from Dominica. I'm Jerry George, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Mek We Chat, another Thursday evening when we're going to go over some of the things around the region and around the world that we think that you should be interested in, or we feel that we need to give you a little bit more information on. As usual, producer Bev Sinclair will tell us what she has on this week's agenda.
Athie, did you hear that gentleman say all the way from Dominica?
Yeah, man.
Athie? Yeah, Athie heard him. All the way from Dominica.
All the way from Dominica.
When did Dominica move?
All the way.
Sometimes it feels that way.
I was listening to a conversation with a marine pilot just today, and he says the Caribbean Sea joins us, it doesn't divide us. And we should think.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I saw someone who is supposed to be a gospel preacher on Facebook singing praises to Mr. Killer. The man's supposed to be a gospel preacher, and he said, Mr. Killer has united people in a way the church can't.
What a thing. What a thing. Man is admitting failure.
I said, oh my goodness.
That's an admission of failure.
My goodness. I wonder.
Stalin was saying that and singing that many, many years ago.
True.
It is culture and calypso that can bring us together. And there was another song about Rasta bringing us together. We've tried, still trying.
But we have a lot of stuff on the menu, including Carnival. Carnival just wrapped up in Trinidad. Where else had Carnival?
Dominica.
Carriacou.
Athie.
Dominica, Guadeloupe, Martinique, Haiti.
Carriacou.
Yeah, Carriacou as well.
There's a lot of us who still.
Well, Haiti kind of put off theirs because of all the thing that they had.
Right, so we're gonna start with Carnival, and of course we're gonna look at LIAT again, and then we have lots of other juicy stuff on the menu. But we don't like to tell the listeners everything just in case people start to salivate and don't get satisfied. So we start with those two, and then we move on. So Carnival. They asked the question, is Carnival becoming a regional event or a regional phenomenon?
Wasn't it always?
This year.
No, well, was it? Should we?
That's the question. That's the question.
Ask ourselves. I mean, just imagine we supposedly were all doing Carnival for the same reason. Same historical reason, but did we ever do it together? Did it bring us together? The questions we were asking before. Did it make us feel more a part of each other's locations? Did we feel at home in each other's carnivals, in each other's societies? I don't know. I'm not sure. Why did we? If it was such a powerful force of community, why did so many of the countries decide to go off on their own and do it at other times? Well, it was jumbie money. They wanted more.
You mean you all had jumbie money in Dominica this year?
Yeah, well, we have Kazillion money. But it seems like the rest of the region is catching on and has caught on. And so Carnival became a commercial operation, a commercial venture, which meant competition. Because when we converted it, when we took it away from what it started being, with an expression of culture and joy and celebration, and said, no, we need to make money from this thing. And now you see this calendar thing here, we had to put it over there because it means there's less competition. Then somebody put this over there. And so we became known for a region that almost every month of the year you can go to Carnival.
Mm-hmm.
And if you include Toronto and New York and
London
and Miami, so but has it brought us together? Is the Caribbean more united today? Not necessarily because of, but if on the same time trajectory as we're looking at Carnival. I don't think so.
Well,
I personally don't see the unity.
The CEO for Carnival in Grenada, he chose just to be at Carnival in Trinidad.
Yeah.
So, though Carnival was happening in Carriacou, he was in Trinidad.
Yeah.
Which probably says something for this regional thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, I know that in time past, it would be unheard of for the Carnival CEO to leave Carriacou Carnival and go to Trinidad Carnival. You'd have to take care of yard first. But he went and, it just formed part of the season. It was no big thing.
Like you see what happened with Killer this year. You remember what happened with Short Shirt from Antigua at the Calypso competition in Trinidad? He was treated as a foreigner, and he said no foreigner should be allowed to and would be allowed to become Calypso monarch in Trinidad. Now we've moved on. We've moved on to Killer and the other Grenadians and, if you will, non-Trinidadians who made it big. Even the video that Marshall Montano did, and where he had a shoot in Dominica, and he had a Dominican producer working with him. So in other words, I'm asking the question not because there are not some really interesting things happening, but because I think we too often allow these things to happen rather than deliberately put them on the agenda and say, how can we deliberately design our cultural activities in a way that bring us together, that create new opportunity, that give our artists access to larger markets, greater technology inputs and experience and so forth. That's what I'm asking. If we truly were building a Caribbean nation, that is what we would be doing. But unfortunately, we're molecularizing the Caribbean. We're dividing it up down to molecules and eventually down to atoms and then down to ions. And everybody wants it because everybody wants to be king or queen.
So what you mentioned there is quite profound, and it is something we have addressed here on Mek We Chat before. The people of the Caribbean want to be united. And I guarantee you that if Carnival celebrations start to bring...
We're molecularizing.
The politicians in the region are going to find some way to put a spoke in it.
I agree with you, Bev. I agree with
that. And just last week I had a little opportunity to speak with the widow of Sir John Compton. He was from Canouan, Grenadine, St. Vincent, and he became Prime Minister in St. Lucia. In those days when it was a natural thing for people to move, if an activity was taking place in St. Lucia, people naturally went to St. Lucia. People went to St. Lucia for weekends. People went to St. Lucia for Carnival. People went to St. Lucia for Easter. Now that we are supposedly independent, all of these roadblocks. Because you could turn up at a border, well, less so now, I suspect, because they're already trying to actualize the OECS freedom of movement. But you could turn up at a border and some custom officer don't like your face and tell you,
and just
no,
they can't enter the country.
You understand? But I was also going to make the point from what Athie was saying. Athie, it is clear that that sense is not there. That is why Killers winning created such excitement.
Yeah.
People held their breath.
Yeah.
And then you have Skinny, Marshall, and Bungie coming together. And in people's minds, this is new. This is heartbreaking because it is not the consciousness. So to answer your question, no, it hasn't. It hasn't.
I agree.
But clearly, it is something that will naturally happen if it is left to grow and mushroom and take root on its own.
Exactly.
You know, but the moment those people who wear jacket and tie and eat too much and drink too much get involved, it's going to be a horse of a different color.
Let me pose a question to us. Do we think that cricket was more of a unifier for the Caribbean than Carnival? Cricket definitely.
Definitely. Even though there were the squabbles among selection of the team, people thought about the small islands versus the big island. At the end of the day, even if they were upset, once the team was playing, they recognized it as our team. They were cussed afterwards, especially if somebody who they didn't think should have been selected was selected. But generally speaking, they accepted that those 11 people out there were representing us. And
Why was that more possible? Did we have a more conscious public, a more alert public? What?
No, I think...
I don't know. I think it's because of the nature of cricket and the nature of the team, in that it was a West Indies team versus individual islands having their own carnival celebration.
For sure.
I don't know. You see, it's kind of like easier, I think, to have a unified cricket team or a unified sports team. I don't see how you're going to have a unified carnival. I don't see how you can, just by virtue of the fact that you're dealing with multiple locations, so I don't see how you can do that. Where I can see the unity coming out of Carnival most so probably is in the music.
Yeah.
That comes from there.
Well, the International Soca Monarch is an event which invites and incorporates artists from all the islands. And as happened in Trinidad this year, the passes went down to support their islander.
Right.
Now, cricket as a sport made up of members from different islands attracts more people. First of all, cricket will cut across the spectrum. It will get old, young, and everybody in between. Carnival will not necessarily attract as wide a cross-section as the sport of cricket would. So right there, you find cricket drawing more people together than Carnival. But to say Carnival in the islands would ever come together and be one big festival, I think that would be a pipe dream. But the events, like the International Soca Monarch, would be structured in such a way to invite people to come in and participate and to make the event itself bigger, and also to bring more of the Caribbean together as a people.
Yeah, and I think what I would add to that too is probably sort of have it, if you want to have like an international soca event, maybe a good thing too would be to have it, for want of a better term, ride the circuit, so that if it was in one island this year, it could be in another island another year, and another island another year. Kind of like similar to how Carifesta is done.
Right. But let me say something else about cricket, Athie, just before. There's an aspect of cricket that drew us together. You have to understand, cricket came out of our colonial past and our colonial experience. When these guys played cricket, and people like Richards and so forth understand their purpose in the whole process. That when they were playing the colonial masters. And somehow they got us to understand that. So when we speak about a black wash of Britain, we were part and parcel of that victory. Because here was this 11 persons from this region that was beating the mother country. So in a sense,
they were representing us.
They were represented. Listen, man, we wanted to be represented by them. Okay? And they in turn, when they went out to play, understood that. I think that is what has been lost with the teams today. The teams today have no raison d'etre. All right? They just played. Their only raison d'etre is really money. But these other guys weren't getting the money. But they saw, and in fact, remember when it was Australia? Yeah. When Australia talked about
say they will kill West Indies.
These, yes.
Even for me, I don't like cricket. I remember that well. And I remember the celebration that broke out. I mean, even I was caught up in it, and I don't like cricket.
Clive Lloyd is said to have said to the team when he had the briefing of the team, well, guys, you heard what they said. That's all he said to the team. That fired up guys like Andy Roberts. All the fast bowlers knew they had to teach them a lesson. It was written into their DNA at this point. We have to teach them a lesson. Your pride. And it's amazing. They said when Clive addressed the team, he says, you all said to the team when he had the briefing of the team. Well, guys,
Jerry, you put your finger on really what's a whole new paradigm for economic growth based on cultural industries that take their fire from the legacy of slavery, which actually led
it was
to
written
the
into
situation
their
where we had
DNA
white
at this
slave
point.
Masters.
Right.
So that the issue of firing up the West Indies team to sort of to bring down fire and brimstone on these guys. But that is the origin. That is the origin, or the original origin of Carnival is slaves. Slaves getting out of the plantation. We took that out of Carnival. Only Trinidad keeps it, with their can't relate.
But I think.
But we don't. So
no,
I'm trying to look for commonalities, because in the same way that Lloyd found a commonality that brought disparate people from the different islands together as one team, there are commonalities in our culture, in our heritage, in our struggle to get off the plantation, in our innovation to take old drums and make steel band the only new instrument in the entire 20th century, to build costumes using little bits and pieces of throwaway that have now become a whole industry and so forth. In other words, we have a massive industry that we're sitting on in each one of the islands. And we have not found a way, not just to bring it all together in one island, no, but to even, you see what tourism does with cruise ships? What do cruisers do? They go from island to island. They bring thousands of people from island to island to see each island. How come we not on those boats going to St. Vincent Mass, going to Antigua Mass, going to, and so consolidating a Caribbean experience that is different from ours, but is rooted in the same.
But Athie,
I don't know. I think there's some.
Athie, when we had Federal Maple and Federal Palm, the two boats given to us after.
Good point.
No, that is what happened.
Good point.
That's precisely what happened. And we have just killed off all of these things. And today we're struggling because LIAT makes it so expensive for us to even move. I remember the days when Trinidad was having Carnival. You couldn't get a ticket into Trinidad. Not you. 2-3 weeks before, you were not going to get a ticket on the LIAT to go to Trinidad. Nowadays, you could buy tickets because they're too expensive.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And the few people who will go. But all the other seats are open so the people maybe have to go to do stuff. Yeah. Okay? So that's the point. We have destroyed it.
And like Grenada organizes ferry shuttle to Trinidad for Carnival. You always have boats, you know, just running between Grenada and Trinidad for Carnival for people who want to go down. You know? So, so it is, as we touched on something with Carnival, that we took out the whole link to slavery and coming out of the plantation as part of the celebration for Carnival. And it's true, that has been lost.
Well, but Bev, that has been lost. But look at what is happening with a fundamental part of that, what we're just speaking here, is Calypso, right? In some, look, soca is now bigger than Calypso. Does soca tell a story? No. Calypso came out of, and I'm not saying one or the other, and that they're mutually exclusive. I'm not making that point. I'm simply saying that what you find in some countries, the politicians, because much of Calypso's social commentary, the politicians try their endeavor best to get people lockjaw. You know, tetanus injection.
Well, I don't know, Jerry. I disagree with the thing that soca doesn't tell a story. Soca can and has and, you know, will tell stories. The problem is you have people who don't know how to tell stories. So that's a whole different ballgame. Calypso has done social commentary. We tend to think of Calypso as only doing social commentary. Calypso has been fun too. It has been funny. It has been dance music and all of that good stuff.
I mentioned the social commentary because that's the political side where it gets pressure from. Right? That's the side it gets
but
pressure
of course,
from.
Okay. In most places, and that has gotten knocked out of a lot of competition.
Right. And the fact that soca can tell a story is not what we are finding to be the norm. That's what I'm saying.
Mean, it has evolved into something else today.
That's the point I'm making.
Yeah,
precisely.
But I still think that you can find quality soca out there. You know, I mean, anybody figure that. Yeah.
Well, Marshall has quite a number of quality soca.
Right.
But what attracts the majority of people isn't not us.
Right. So you know, I guess. I think it's a bigger reflection of something else too. I mean, it starts in other places. If you put garbage in, you'll get garbage out.
Thank you.
So clearly, we also have a generation whose heads have been filled with garbage. So
I think we're trying to compare apples with pears because soca never was intended to be storytelling and social commentary the way Calypso is. Never.
I don't quite agree.
I don't agree with you, Beverley.
Soca is serious rebel music, you know. Mm-hmm. It is designed to aggravate and to annoy because the people singing it and performing it have been aggravated and annoyed by the system.
Well, let me put it another way.
And they're fighting fire with fire.
Let me put it another way then and speak from my personal experience and soca songs that I've heard. I have not heard a soca that was a biting or a confrontational piece of social commentary.
Oh, there's a lot. There is a lot.
I've heard any.
Okay.
I've certainly heard the calypsos that do that. Mm-hmm. But the soca that appeals to the jump and wave and that kind of music, I haven't heard social commentary in them.
A lot of them.
But, you know, it doesn't always have to be social commentary. I mean, life is more than just social commentary, and people do get tired of that. But, I mean, at the same time, to just beat to piece of pan and come and tell me that, you know, that is something else, that is music is something else. It's a whole...
It's about telling a story.
When David Rudder was with Charlie's Roots, and they came up with these phrases, we come out to mash up the place. Was he saying, let's mash up the place? No. He's saying, let's free up the energy that is in us, the cultural energy, the creative energy. Let it go. Don't
similarly, right. And similarly to when Blue Boy, you know, immediately come into mind, you know, it's like, you know, my brain is not even thinking, but, you know, Soca Baptist comes to mind. Mm-hmm. Soca Baptist is a story about Soca Baptist, about baptism, that's real life and certainly part of our culture and community and everything else. I mean, when Blue Boy sang Soca Baptist, I could relate to it. I remember as kids, we would do a Baptist. I mean, if I want to get in that mode, I could do a real good Baptist chant and everything else for you, you know.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
You
we
know?
hear it, man. Let's get it, man.
Let's hear it.
Let me get the shake down,
No, but you know, as kids, you know, we did that. I grew up with Shango Baptist. I grew up around them. I don't have a problem. I had family members who are baptized in Baptist. I went to enough Saracas. I know all the rituals. So when Blue Boy sing about that, I know what he's singing about. I could relate to it.
Yeah.
So this is why I'm saying you cannot equate that with what it has become today.
Yeah. Well, that's the point, Margaret, because I agree with you. If you talk about one soca that really tells a story of the culture, that is it. You just hit the nail on the head. But outside of that, what are the others saying? And Blue Boys, masterfully placed. People have taken license from that. And all you have gotten over the last 2 years is a few lines that call people to do things like guitar, show me your worst behavior, bring something in the party. But Blue Boy did not have that in mind. But that is what it has degenerated to, and that's the point I'm making.
And this is why it comes back to what I was saying, garbage in, garbage out. The reason why Blue Boy could sing about that is because the people who were able to write about that, they are people who are steeped in our culture and know our culture and could sing about the varying parts of the culture. You know?
But so we're saying, well, we are lacking that today then.
And we could,
That's it. That's right. That's it right there.
That means a point which I think has become an iconic point for Bev, which is the real problem is the politics and the parties and the leadership. And if you had enlightened leadership, picking up on what Margaret is saying about garbage in, garbage out, if you had enlightened leadership that didn't have garbage in their brains, they would see these possibilities. They need to connect up the culture with the reality of people's lives, to let it not just reflect what's wrong, but to give guidance as to what is right and possible. The steel band would have been a massively powerful phenomenon. You know many young Caribbean people in all our countries play band?
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yes, lots.
Taken together. I mean, so that single instrument has been able to do something that no government has been able to do. No CARICOM, no OECS, no CDB, no nothing. And they're still not investing in it. They're still not investing in it. They don't see it as having any potential because there's no money. They don't see no money, you know?
But Athie, you're making a good point because today we talk about climate change, we talk about recycling and all that. The biggest victory of recycling, I believe, anywhere is the steel pan.
It's pan.
These old oil drums that came in that were going to become part of the garbage and the waste of the region. I remember when I was in England, in the Southwest, I met these people and I was introduced to them as coming from the Caribbean. And I would never forget this. The woman says, oh, and she turned to her children and she says, oh, this man is from a place where they take old oil drums and make music. She never said the word steel band yet, you know. She said they take old oil drum and make sweet music. And I remember my chest kind of stepping forward and my chin going up on this broad smile because I had never thought of it in those terms. And they were so excited that these old steel drums could be translated. We have never really celebrated that back, you know. We talk a lot about recycling. We talk a lot about recycling plastics. And we actually sit on the best example of recycling there is. Best example.
Reduce.
Right. Well, let's take a little break now and come back and continue our discussion because, of course, there are so many different aspects to this thing called Carnival.
Oh, I thought you were ready to leave. Okay.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com, When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, neighbor.
Here's the bill I asked you to pay for me.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low?
For one, we size our transformers just for what we need. And we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LEDs.
They burn less energy, right?
Much less. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
And Grenlec is always advising us not to open the fridge too often.
That's right. And my family washes and irons in bulk.
With fuel prices changing all the time, how do you know if it is working?
We pay attention to the usage history table. Over time, our average usage has decreased.
So while Grenada can't control fuel prices, I can conserve energy and save money.
GRENLEC, energizing our Grenada.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Quad Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Quad Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank. And there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Alrighty, folks. We back.
We're back. Welcome back, folks, to this edition of Mek We Chat.
Hold on. Before you bung away, Jerry, you guys have been ignoring your supporters, your compatriots, your fans tonight.
But that's your job. Your job is to lift them.
No. No, we can do it.
I agree. George is the one who always keeps the fans in the loop.
The fans in place. Okay. Joe Mastermind is saying salutations to you, ladies and gentlemen. And somebody by the name of Don Mark made a comment a little while ago when you guys were talking about LIAT. And she said, yes, when LIAT tickets were cheaper, people traveled. Ain't that the truth? Yeah. You know,
Can't afford to do that now.
Beverly?
Yes, George.
Yeah, no, you haven't gotten to your LIAT section yet, have you?
No, not yet.
All right. Okay. Emma Ventura says, always remember, and this is your discussion about music. She says, always remember to each its own. Good night, all. If music is the food of life.
Play on.
No. She didn't say play on. She said, let it leaves on. Okay. It does not matter what type of music. And she says that's just her take. And by the way, she says, stop saying garbage.
What? Who's saying garbage?
I guess probably for not saying garbage and garbage out.
Oh, well, yeah, that's right. You said that.
Oh, the word itself, garbage. Garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Giggle.
All right, tell her to give us a different word. Same meaning. Right, so, yeah, one of those comments you mentioned about music. Yeah, there are so many different genres of music, and you're right, to each his own. Some people will love soca and some people will not. Some people love calypso and some people don't. I mean, it's no big thing what kind of music anyone likes. Or you know, the discussion was not along that line to say who likes what. It's just a general discussion on the soca that goes with Carnival and what it represents and how we relate to it. So that is where the argument was going, not a thing about who like what and who don't like what. I am sure most people in the Caribbean right now just love the winning international soca monarch song.
But as we mentioned on that story, what Margaret talked about, story. Killer song is a story.
Oh yes, that is a story.
So I mean, when we say story, and when we say the focus is not totally on social commentary, but in a sense that song is a social commentary.
It is.
But it's not seen political as other people sometimes tend to think a social commentary is.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest point one of the biggest point out of that song is if we sat down and looked at how many songs over the last 10 years that has been written about and performed in Carnival about rum, that itself is a social commentary. Because this one is the most spectacular of the lot. But there's been a lot of songs in recent years about rum. What is that telling us? It's something we probably need to stop and ask ourselves.
Yeah. And I think we need to drive home the point that social commentary does not necessarily have to be political commentary.
Exactly.
So that winning song, it is a social commentary about rum and the way people behave when they drink and get drunk. Incidentally, I understand they tried to run with it in a restaurant in Jamaica, and one look from the security guard, all man and Jack stop run one time. So I'm watching with quite amused to see how that one is going to play out in Jamaica. I am sure in that country it will not be so easy to pick up things and run.
Well, also think of the United States.
Oh no, I don't think you want to do that.
Oh no, or Canada. Oh no, you pick up anything around it at all.
Yeah,
I've always said that if I am marshals are so strict in those places, could you imagine them trying to perform that?
Yeah. Right, so our next topic, which is somehow linked to this one, I call it LIAT again. And before we even start the discussion properly, George has a clip for us, which is going to put LIAT's current position into perspective. Because what we're going to talk about is the fact that the money which is holding up LIAT wins run out again, and the wings are going to flap by its side. So
it's not the wins. It's not the wins between our wins. Is the dollars?
It's the dollars.
The currency. Right. Okay.
Yes. So George, if you have that clip with Prime Minister Mitchell, you could play for us, please.
Giving LIAT money, grant money that they don't have to pay back. Millions of dollars. Since I was Minister of Civil Aviation in the 80s, Mr. Speaker, in the past, the 2000, when the oil price was high, and Trinidad was giving us some support based on the excess resources they have. Each of the countries used to share in the benefits of those extra resources. They got millions of dollars. They had a $42 million that were going to be shared by the islands. The Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines said, LIAT is in trouble. Let us forego and give LIAT the money. We give LIAT that big piece of money, Mr. Speaker, most of it. They said, well, we settle now. You don't have to worry about it. 6 months' time, LIAT come back, they're in trouble again. We went to CDB, we took loans as individual governments. Millions of dollars to LIAT. LIAT traveling full. They can't make profit. With all the grant support. The Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the present Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the Prime Minister of Antigua, not Antigua, St. Kitts, they all say they're fed up. They're fed up just funding an operation which is running it like a business, private business, with government support, with no responsibility of protecting the citizens of the country. And Brother Ralph always calling me and he wants money for LIAT. I want my Prime Minister colleague, Brother Ralph, was putting so much money in LIAT, all what's investing doesn't have. Cussing LIAT a few months ago and saying he tired. I said, you're tired now? I said, well, you reach where Grenada reach. But you know what the result was? Cut flights to Grenada. Cut flights. That can't be right. Ralph always calling me and he wants money.
Hello? There you
I
go.
want my Prime Minister colleague, Brother Ralph, was putting so much money in LIAT, all what's investing doesn't have. Cussing LIAT a few months ago and saying, you're tired. I said, you're tired now? I said, well, you reach where Grenada reach. But you know what the result was? Cut flights to Grenada. Cut flights. That can't be right. Ralph always calling me and he wants.
All right.
Yes, that was it. To summarize, he was giving an account of how much money Caribbean governments have actually put into LIAT. He spoke about the time when Trinidad had excess money from oil, and there was this time when they had 42 million United States dollars that was supposed to be shared among the islands. And the Prime Minister of St. Vincent, I like to call him Uncle Ralph. Uncle Ralph said, boy, LIAT in need, you know. Let's give LIAT the money. And the heads agreed. I said, all right. And Dr. Mitchell said they took most of the 42 million and they give it to LIAT. And
and they were told.
Yes, we good now. Yes, they were told after they got that, as Dr. Mitchell said, big piece of money. Wait, let me come. Big piece of money. After they got that big piece of money, Ralph tell them, we good now. 6 months later, LIAT come back. Money done. They go to CDB, they borrow money, and the last part now is what we heard when Margaret helped us out. Dr. Mitchell saying, Ralphie always coming to him, you know, when he want money for LIAT. And that is the situation up to now.
What did Grenada decide? To me, I heard that Grenada decided to make an investment.
Well, not an investment. They're going to give some money at the end of this month in the current situation. And then they have asked for load factor details.
No, before you go there, the money they say they're going to give at the end of this month is in response to the immediate 5 million, which LIAT says it needs. But Grenada is asking for a report on the board before they decide how much they're going to give.
I see. Okay.
Right. So it's I don't know what kind of promise is that. Yes, we're going to give you some money. We'll give it to you by the end of the month. But that is contingent on you giving us a report from your board and we looking at it and then from that making a determination.
Yeah, because I mean, I think it's a fair request. I can't be giving you money and not knowing what's happening, you know.
But that is what has happened over the last couple of years.
Yes. No, yes, that 42 million which they gave to LIAT, LIAT didn't provide any.
Was there any accounting for that money? Is there a definitive report somewhere that says this is why LIAT is not floating?
Nowhere.
There's
and you know what? And I think that's the reason why LIAT continues to do what it does.
Exactly.
It makes no effort because there's no accountability.
There's no
None
accountability.
at all.
They don't have to tell anybody anything. As I said,
I don't think
Mark Darby, who was the last British CEO, made the point that LIAT is run like a government department. How does a government department run? You get a budget this year, you put money into the budget. When the year is finished and the budget is over, you simply put more money. There's nothing about carrying on, making a profit and finding a way to make the link between last year and this year. You just find more money and put it in it.
But there are two other dimensions of the way government runs things that we must not forget, which are plaguing LIAT, I'm sure. One, that a politician picks up the phone and says, look, I have a partner there, he needs a job, find him something there, fix him up.
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely.
Or they have a partner there who doesn't know what the heck he's doing, whether he's the manager or not. But hey, he's my partner. Leave him there. You understand? And so the inefficiencies become institutionalized. They become endemic.
Of course.
And
exactly what
that
happened.
doesn't get sorted out.
But Athie, that's what Mark Darby said. He said trying to run an airline that's owned by 3 different countries. In his time it was 3 countries. Now it's 4. He says part of the problem is each country has its own agenda.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is no one agenda. The other thing he said is that each country sometimes get down to the level of board members making executive decisions. So whether that decision is good for the country or the company doesn't matter. Is that I am the person in charge in this country and I want so and so. And he says the third thing he said was the fact that to get any decision passed, you need consensus. Now, it's the one thing that says why the EC dollar is probably going to be maintained, because it could never get consensus in the currency union. But he was saying that is the problem. He said you cannot get consensus on any matter. So it means, therefore, that the board and the business simply flounders along, hoping for the best, because they have no way of charting a distinct course.
But it's
that can't continue to happen.
Task, you know, to be must be an unenviable task to be a director of LIAT. You're supposedly the Caribbean airline, but only 4 governments have accepted that to the point where they put their money where their mouth is, and then you have to contend with all these varied situations in these countries that you have to do business, and it can't work if there's no buy-in. Then let the airline serve the 4 islands that own it. Other people want to charter the LIAT service, let them charter it. But
no,
I don't know. It just is.
I see it different. I see it different, because if the airline is going to belong to these 3 countries and they are going to manage it and run it, it cannot survive just flying between those 3 countries. No. It can't. Trinidad also has Caribbean Airlines. Caribbean Airlines cannot survive by flying Trinidad. It has to go somewhere. It has to work. It has to create a living. It has to earn. But you have LIAT, which is said to be the Caribbean airline, which is a tagline they use for sentimental reasons, always using it the wrong way. If it is the Caribbean airline and it is supposed to be an airline that serves the Caribbean, LIAT once upon a time used to go to Puerto Rico. Does it still go to Puerto Rico?
Nah, they dropped the Puerto Rico link.
Exactly. You know? So it cannot anymore manage to go to these places. Why? Because the US government didn't give them money.
Did LIAT benefit from Petrocarib? What was the impact of Petrocarib on LIAT's operation?
Very good point. Very good point. Because I have never heard 2 things. I've never heard citizens buying investment money going to LIAT, and I've never heard Petrocarib money going to LIAT. And those are 2 fairly, what must I call it?
Lucrative.
Yeah, source of funds. You've never heard those 2 things.
Well, maybe none of the citizens who want to invest in LIAT, because I understand that they choose the projects, you know. So maybe
no, but the governments have some leeway in terms of how they spend the money. They could prove the projects they want, but the government does have some liberty about how they spend the money.
Grenada has its National Transformation Fund, which is not tied to anything. It's just a fund that they put the money in.
Right.
Maybe that's where the money coming from to give to LIAT. I don't know.
You think the teachers are going to accept that as an explanation?
Well, the teachers should not getting no money out of the transformation fund. But seriously.
But as long as we keep pretending and playing at being one region, playing at being a Caribbean with a common history and a common future, but behaving as if we are all these independent little states, nothing will work. Not just LIAT.
Nothing will work.
It's just the latest example of the dysfunctionality.
Absolutely.
It's almost as if we have become a region that is bipolar.
Or schizophrenic.
Or schizophrenic or something, and so if you cannot function without buy-in. There was no what was the last thing that we did on which there was consensus and strong buy-in? I can remember, I can have a long list in front of me of things that failed because we didn't have buy-in. Are there some good, are there any examples that would prove the point? It's just
regionally?
The university.
Yeah, something that we all agreed on and did and made it work and it was great. And
the university and CXC. No, I'm not saying that they were good enough. I'm saying that there was general consensus and buy-in into it.
Up until a few years ago. When everybody wants their own university now and their own state and their own.
Yeah, because education now, it's not.
It's a business
anymore, it's just selling degrees.
It's a business.
Yeah, you just go and buy a degree, full stop.
But talking about that, I noticed that UE seems to be talking about putting up a lot more structures in terms of brick and mortar, and I wonder about that.
That's a look.
But that's another discussion.
Because we're looking at regional institutions that had buy-in and had support. I think the region was glad for you and it was glad for
At the time, certainly.
Yeah, the time, certainly. Now, in practical terms, you can see a lot of weaknesses in these institutions that need to be addressed. But at least the region got behind them and made them work. Now, with the LIAT, and look at it, while CXC doesn't go around asking governments for money. CXC has found a way to finance itself and be a profitable entity. So, and CXC is a whole lot younger than LIAT. So why can't LIAT find a business model that works?
Because CXC has to make a profit to reinvest in the whole cycle background. That's the difference. They're not sitting there waiting for somebody when they're out of money to give them. They have to run their own business.
But shouldn't that be true of LIAT as well?
Absolutely.
And more so?
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
So it is clear. As a friend of mine would say, you don't have to put on petticoat fissy. That LIAT is just not being managed properly.
We say I have to put on petticoat fissy?
Petticoat.
Because I want to know if petticoat coming to do that.
You hearing what you want to hear.
No, I was wondering.
But what you're saying there raises in my mind another point, which is because we're trying to, here we are wrestling with something over which we have no power, no control. But as Caribbean people, we should really, in all honesty, try to figure out why it's not working. So I ask a simple question. If you have a 10-wheeler truck that you need to use to move goods from point A to point B, do you give it to somebody who knows how to skate? Not drive a truck? I ask this question for this simple reason. Of all the people who have been placed in charge of LIAT over the last 30 years, there have been some who have brought some experience in aviation to the table. But the majority of them have had absolutely no exposure to aviation, to running an airline, which from my very limited, almost dummy level understanding of it, is a very peculiar and specific kind of industry.
But Athie, you're talking about aviation. The majority of the boat members have never run a business.
Well, yeah, but in this case, certainly not this kind of business.
No. Well, you talking about the kind. I'm talking about business because Mark Darby made the point that the board is comprised of career individuals, career civil servants, of people from the NGOs, of people who, and he made that same point, people who have never run a business.
So what's the criteria for a board member?
Is the LIAT a government entity? What's the criteria for anything more than somebody like
But
you?
here's what though. But Jerry, you're saying that some people come from NGOs and stuff. I mean, you still need to know how to run and manage something in order.
Listen, even if you're at an NGO, still have the disciplines of business. A real business is not as stringent and new as an NGO, I mean, I'm not saying, I know some good managers who've come out of NGOs, don't get me wrong. There are some good managers. But I'm saying, and when you take the point that Athie made about the aviation industry being even more specialized, here's where we run into problems. Because it's not just a question of figures on a sheet of paper that you sit on a board meeting and you look at these figures. It's more than that. There are issues of staffing. There's issue of the licensing and what the pilots, whatever the pilots are allowed to do and what they subscribe. It's a whole ton of stuff.
Peculiar working hours in the industry. You have to understand the industry, and even if you become a part of it, you don't have to know everything, but you have to learn very quickly.
But that's exactly the point.
The point I'm raising, is from Mr. Mark Darby. I had it up, I think I took it on, and I'm making the point that he made because he said, right, that he didn't think the board was competent because it was comprised of people who do not know business.
Right.
And the one point that he made more importantly, he says, that being the case, the board had absolutely no strategic direction. It had no vision. They just went along, and he says all they did is that they made decision after decision. They never looked to see how the decisions influence anything.
But I think you hit a key thing there too. Outside of lacking the management experience, you touched a key point, which is prevalent up and down the Caribbean. And that is the lack of vision.
Absolutely.
If you don't have a vision of where you see yourself in the future, where you want to go, you really can't begin to make plans to get there.
Exactly.
It's like I said, when you don't know where you're going, and
you get there, and you get there fast too.
So because ultimately you have some prime ministers who are the shareholders group, and they are the ones who control ultimately what happens within LIAT. That is where the problem is. You notice in a news release which came out this week, after the announcement was made that Grenada is going to give LIAT money. The news release ended with the minister who delivered the news. He said, that words to the effect that LIAT need to be restructured so that there is no political interference in its operations. Why
Bottom line.
Make such a remark? Because he knows what goes on.
Yes.
He knows.
Yes. When you have a board and the CEO could say that the board gets down to making executive decisions and actually directing the executive, that is exactly a no. The only person who's supposed to have that link between the board and the management is the CEO. The CEO must be given the policy direction, and he goes and carries it out.
Yeah.
Right. But what they say happening with the LIAT board, you have people on the board who will call managers and tell them what they want done, jumping over the CEO, everybody. What kind of business can you run like that?
Yeah.
What can you run like that?
And I guess that's the difference between here and there, in that a board could not operate like that here.
You're mad?
Away with it.
No,
because there's something there's something that is referred to as a board. Being on a board is a serious responsibility.
Serious thing.
And here they talk about your fiduciary responsibility. You can't be on a board and play the fool, because if it goes belly up, you are responsible. You should have seen what was coming. You should have known what was going wrong. You made the decisions. You okayed stuff. You can't sit and say that you didn't know.
Well,
you can't do that.
If LIAT went belly up today, the board will walk away like if nothing happened.
That is the point. Is that
That's the problem.
We have a culture where we refuse to hold people's feet to the fire. We refuse to hold them accountable. From the highest level to the lowest level, we refuse. Everybody is blaming somebody else for something. Just look at this case for us in Dominica. The Prime Minister took a decision to go into LIAT and took $9 million and put it in LIAT. No questions asked. It wasn't brought to Parliament. It wasn't. It was an announcement. End of. Very soon thereafter, Ross University, a growing business, informs that their student body is increasing, and they have an issue because they have to move those people in and out of the island 4 times a year in the space of their various short breaks, and it's not happening. So air access was a problem. So people said, good, we on LIAT now, so we're going to be able to move LIAT around to make sure that this happens. Hello? It is precisely under that watch of we being a director and owner of LIAT that Ross University said, enough already. My student body is growing. We're at 2,000. We're going to be 2,500 next year. Next year, we're going to be 4,000. The following year after that, and so on and so on. We cannot run our business that way. We cannot mortgage the brand of Ross University and the future of this institution on your incompetence, your lack of vision, which is what Margaret was talking about. If you saw the need, if you wanted to keep Ross and you knew one of the soft points, one of the problems was access, don't you make superhuman effort to ensure that your participation in LIAT has as your main objective being able to move those people in and out of the country 4 times a year?
Because that's a guaranteed
That's
market.
$54 million. That's
a guaranteed market.
That's 30% of your GDP that you're risking, and you lost it. And to the point of accountability, nobody is held anybody accountable for that.
Nobody.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is too, he should have asked, if I'm giving you X number of dollars, what am I getting in return?
Duh.
Yeah.
I mean,
and Margaret, you know, the every year this movement, this migration of the students and their happens at the same
time.
And the dates are very clear and predictable. You could actually say to LIAT, we blocking out those dates for Dominica.
Yeah, that's true.
Or put on some charters. Or put in some charters in those things.
You know, but come on.
Well, what we were talking about was the management, you know. We have difficulty here in the clip, or we're not hearing the clip when George plays them, because he had another one with Alan Bezinski talking about LIAT and the fairs, but George was not hearing. Margaret had to turn on her phone a while ago and help us to hear the one we played before. So we'd like to hear what Alan had to say about LIAT and its fairs, but we'd love to hear.
Okay, so could we just before George go to that, probably just hit Facebook. Since George,
I'm here, but you know, I really
okay.
I really can't figure out why is it that the Mek We Chat team cannot hear. Because Margaret, you were on with me this morning. You heard the GIS report. It's the same MP4 file I played. You know, so I cannot figure out how come it is that you guys on Mek We Chat just can't hear me.
We're not hearing you.
Definitely not.
Yeah, there's something going on there.
When all else fails, is the zombie that caused that. You have a zombie in your face.
In Africa.
Anyway, one thing's for certain, it's going out on the air. It's just that you folks, you honored guests, or your guests, you guys are being deprived of hearing it. But anyhow, here goes. Alan and me this morning on Good Day Grenada.
issue has to do with political interference. Because you keep changing
because there's like the
qualified,
debate.
experienced personnel in the position of chief executive officer. They are paid a lot of money in keeping with their experience and qualifications.
3 and 4 years, was it?
Yep, and that was in 2016, up to 2016. So in fact, I believe I'm correct that the current CEO is someone who came up through the ranks and I believe was involved in marketing and has now been in place because effectively we have seen that certain prime ministers, and I hasten to say right now, not ours, but certain prime ministers of contributing governments get involved with this sort of detailed day-to-day routine operations, such as determining the number of flights to a particular destination. Now, I think you will recall, it may have well have been in 2016 or so, when LIAT reduced the number of flights into Grenada and diverted them to St. Vincent as a result of political interference, or maybe as a consequence of a statement made by certain prime ministers of contributing that no more money would be provided to LIAT by Grenada. Now, it's sort of counterproductive in my view, because I can tell you that I have come across a document which is a simple ticket for travel return from Grenada to Antigua. The fare paid by the traveler is a total of $506.24. That is $506.24 US currency. You won't be surprised to hear that the base fare is $278 US. According to the ticket, the fare analysis, charges related to the Grenada side amount to $126.38 US, and charges related to the Antigua side are $101.86. Total taxes, service charges, baggage screening fee, and all sorts of little things, $228.24. That is 45% of the total fare paid by the traveler goes to two respective governments. All I can say about that is at least the government of Antigua is contributing to LIAT. So the question then arises, since the heads, it has been reported that the heads met recently in St. Kitts, and a decision was made that LIAT needs money, they will run out of money in 10 days, well, I think in 8 days by now. So the money has to come from somewhere, and in the interim, we understand that our Minister of, well, I don't know what he is, because he has a fairly wide portfolio, but I've heard him referred to on a recent newscast as a Minister of Economics. So he is saying that, yes, a contribution will be made by Grenada, but we have to wait on some formula. I don't know where this formula is coming from.
Is the incompetence that we talked about earlier in terms of the board. And secondly, he did an analysis of a ticket that he had. When people say the government pays, I struggle with that, because when I travel, I pay. And then when the country takes money and put it back into there, I pay again.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm paying twice. So it mustn't just be simply seen as the government. It's not the government, it's the taxpayers of the country. So I pay when I pay for my ticket. And then when they come to a situation like this, when they want another $5 million, I pay again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So something is fundamentally wrong about that.
Yeah, you're being double billed.
Exactly.
All right, guys. I have just received something that I think is very interesting, and I want to share with you guys. Somebody has penned, I will refer to it as an opinion piece, and it is captioned, "What has changed at LIAT, Mr. Prime Minister?" And if you'll bear with me, I'd like to share this with you. I quote, At long last, the government of Grenada has decided to inject much-needed funds into regional carrier LIAT. Grenadians will recall the obstinate attitude of Prime Minister Mitchell in relation to the subject matter. His infantile tantrums about LIAT and its management often left regional leaders scratching their heads about an attitude that defies reason. He even set preconditions that must be met before Grenadian taxpayers' money can be invested in the regional airline. He ranted and raved about flight itinerary, operational costs, managerial incompetence, to name a few. At the same time, he committed the country's funds to pay subvention to foreign airlines and refused to do so with a regional carrier which provides airlift to the island for more than 50 uninterrupted years. Unconfirmed reports dating back decades indicated that the real reason for his ridiculous stance...
Do you want an easy 5K per month business? Well...
Hello?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we're here. Go ahead.
Okay. Unconfirmed reports dating back decades indicated that the real reason for his ridiculous stance in respect to LIAT came about as a result of being left grounded from a flight where he allegedly turned up late for a scheduled flight. Such is the character of the man who believes that the world revolves around him and his whims and fancies. His argument that the airline needed private sector style management was diminished by the fact that Carib Express and Caribbean Star came and went. They were both private sector managed operations. However, LIAT stood the test of time. The present CEO of the airline, who was a long-standing senior employee, must be quietly amused by the about-face decision of Dr. Mitchell. So what has changed, Mr. Prime Minister? The constant changes of senior operating officers continues. Uneconomic routes still exist on their schedule, and the carrier remains cash-strapped. Local taxes do not assist the cause of lower fares, and the cost of interregional travel continues to be prohibitive. There is reason to believe that his desire to be accepted by regional heads may be the underlying reason. The fact that many regional heads show up in the spice aisle outside of high-profile regional meetings may be an indication that he has overcome that hurdle. This whole episode demonstrates what we have to contend with in these islands, where elected leaders become increasingly more capricious and egotistic in their discharge of their public duty. Such duty is being treated as if our islands have become their private and personal property, where the greater good is treated with scant respect. Finally, the aspirations of our Caribbean people for regional unity and cooperation predominate. Nothing more, nothing less. Hello. I done.
I am saying that that article seeks to exonerate LIAT and its management of their responsibility, and instead has decided that they're going to attack Prime Minister Mitchell. That article, in my mind, absolutely has no credibility. I'm very sorry. Because if you could, with all the stuff that has happened over the thing, and you could write an article that seeks to exonerate LIAT and its management, really? Nah, sorry.
Yeah, so,
Tell a person we'll come again.
Yeah, maybe the person doesn't have a good grasp of what's been going on by LIAT over these years.
The person don't care about LIAT. The person just want to throw some choice.
Attack. The person wants to attack. We have to get past that. You have to get past that. Come on, let's get past that. Because when you're telling me, in the first place, I'll tell you this. LIAT has promoted its financial controller to CEO. To me, in any serious business, that's a mistake. I said it. I have to also give her credit that she has so far conducted herself in a fashion that at least leaves her the benefit of the doubt. All right? Because if you take somebody who's been in there and part of the problem and simply promote them up, you really expect anything to change? So come on. You see, I'm speaking now. No, that's my point. So, I mean, to make us, to wax her so nice and give her a nice luster. No, sorry, no. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's a disingenuous article. But as Athie said, we discussed the issue. We do not have direct control over it, but we are among the pool of taxpayers who have to be paying for LIAT one way or the other, sometimes more than one way. We are all paying for LIAT's incompetence and for LIAT's mistakes over the years. And I believe we have to begin, I think it's Jerry who said it in another forum, maybe begin writing to our prime ministers, writing to the people at LIAT, begin to make our voices heard, that we are not content to just sit by and have LIAT ask for another $5 million and have our tax money, which is needed for other things, just being doled out to LIAT year after year after year under the same circumstances without anything changing, without without any indication that anything is going to be different. We're not
Listen to me.
to have our tax money spent that way at all.
The ultimate example of LIAT's managerial incompetence came to us in 2013. LIAT is buying new planes. They have to send off pilots to be trained. When the pilots are trained, they can't come back to fly the planes they used to fly. LIAT does not hire some extra pilots to fill that gap. What happened? People get left right across the Caribbean in airports. A complete, utter meltdown. And you tell me the number management? You have to be joking. You have to be joking.
But isn't LIAT in a monopoly situation in the Eastern Caribbean? Monopoly meaning no competition?
In terms of
a protected monopoly situation.
And they still
Rachel has joined us. Good night, Rachel.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it is laughable, Athie, but I believe that taxpayers all across the region at this present juncture, with LIAT again coming for more money, we really need to put on on our prime ministers and our ministers of finance and say, nah,
but
not our money. Not again.
Where is Mueller when you need him in the Caribbean?
Finish it.
In the final analysis, if you don't get a few of these guys and put them in the public view and put them on live television and grill them.
No, put them on a stand and
get all the senior management, etc., and grill them and get down to, because this is not your money, sir. This is people's money, and you took a Bible and you said you're going to, without fear or favor, run this thing. And I mean, that it really. I keep coming back to this proverbial square one and starting point. Unless these guys, get their pants taken down in public.
What an imagery!
I mean, not figuratively. I mean,
that was an imagery.
But get their pants taken down in public and let them be exposed to the fullest extent of their glory.
Athie, in the Caribbean, that might not be an exposure that they might mind.
Well, let me put it this way. But
depending.
It depends on what kind of mirror they've been looking into. And I really do believe we have to subject them to that kind of, if you will, gross, crude, direct public scrutiny. And without that, I'm afraid we just kind of spinning top in mud, you know.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
it comes back to our arguments earlier about regional institutions. Our prime ministers control all the institutions in the region, including the justice institutions of justice. So you don't find them.
They will contend with you on that score, though. That can't happen.
You do not find the Attorney General making any proclamations of corruption or anything like that against any government, any prime minister in this region. They control.
You mad? Nah, the Attorney General knows who's buttering his bread, you know.
Definitely.
Precisely so. Yes,
Even though they get so fed up, they'll still be afraid to protest. Look at how these lawyers that had the protest there. Look at what they have quiet. They went quiet.
Please, don't insult the road protest by describing that as a protest.
No bacchanalia.
No bacchanalia.
Just about no bacchanalia. So that is to tell you, if they wouldn't protest, no bacchanalia.
And that is why in our societies, it is only through rising up of people's voices that there can really be any effective change. As long as people sit back and are quiet and don't pay the taxes and don't do anything and don't say anything, and those who control the institutions just continue to do what they do.
It's a simple formula, and you know, it's like the pastors and priests will tell you, just get baptized and accept God as your savior. That's the formula. You'll be all right.
Everything done.
In life, the hard life, just simple formula. Just they realize that them little fellas, they ain't no gods. They're just like you and me. When they're out of office, they're just on the street. They're like anybody else in the market store, like everybody else. So what make you be frightened to go to them and tell them exactly how you feel? They're humans.
That is my viewpoint. I tell you that.
Oh, I tell you. But they're getting away with a lot, Jerry. They're getting
too much. Way too much. We'll give them too much room to play.
To the point now where they start to think that they own the resources of the state. As his prime minister who tell people government have no obligation to assist them after a national disaster like a hurricane.
Let's hold on. Let's just welcome Rachel. I don't know if you want to say something, Rachel. Are you hearing us? Rachel, are you hearing us? She seems to be struggling a little bit to get connected.
Right. Yeah. So when I heard the Prime Minister of Dominica say a government is under no obligation with their own money.
You
know?
No obligation.
I find that's one of the most amazing statements I've heard. To be honest with you, that is such an amazing statement.
But this is how contented and contentious prime ministers in the region have become, so that they
become mad. They become possessed.
How could you say that as the leader of the country, you sitting there begging for other international organizations to come to your assistance? And you are saying, and you, in many instances, they feel that it's the responsibility of the Red Cross and United Nations to come to their assistance. But it's not the responsibility of the government who were elected by the people to come. No. Something is fundamentally wrong with our thinking.
Government assists as far as they can, but they're under no obligation to help anyone. It's the people's money.
But you see, the hypocrisy of the whole thing is really what's sickening. I mean, did you guys see the statement that CARICOM's chairman just read out about the situation, the worsening situation in Venezuela? It is to me the best assembly of all the reasons why all of them need to be out of office.
No, I totally agree with that. Absolutely. And not only that, the Caribbean leaders together cannot convince anybody of a position. They can't even stand together in a position. They're all compromised. So no matter what statement they put out means nothing because they have not demonstrated themselves that they can stand on their own and they can stand together on a position.
Come on.
come.
Anyway, let's take our final break and come back. Lots more on the menu.
Yes,
So we're back.
We're back. Welcome back, folks, to this edition of Mek We Chat, and we are into our final half an hour or so. Yeah, that's about half an hour. Tonight
Okay,
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just going to say, don't forget your folks on Facebook,
No, right. So we have anything that we want to report from them?
So let's see.
George is the one. Okay.
So let's see. When we were talking about LIAT and accountability, Kipling Francis said, "Why should LIAT be held accountable when most of the island's governments don't care about accountability? They only talk of accountability when campaigning or in opposition." And then he goes on to say, "By the way, there's not much difference between the operation of LIAT and the West Indies Board."
We're in bad shape, boy.
Tell you.
Yes, I think that's where we are here.
No, but that's two good points, and especially as they bring in the West Indies Board. We in the Caribbean have not understood management and governance. We could say all we want. We have. Well, I don't think it's not that we have not understood it, but we refuse to subscribe to the real disciplines of either management or governance. We mouth the same thing about good governance. Oh, we have good governance. But when you look behind the way we operate, that's a joke. It's a huge joke. And when it comes to management, the people who ascend to levels of management see themselves as demigods. It's not about managing the people and the processes and the resources. It's nothing to do with that. It's that once I get and I'm called a manager, here's what I am, the big boy here.
I'm the boss.
I must drive the best car in the company.
Yeah, that's it.
I must have my own parking space.
Those are the things that that matter to all people as managers.
Oh, yes.
They treat the staff anyhow. They do not. They are working for a company, but they do not continue to see themselves as part of the company.
Oh no.
You understand?
All of a sudden,
They appear as if they can't be fired themselves, you know.
They adopt this kind of master-slave mentality.
Exactly.
That's how they rule. That's their approach. That's what as soon as they get a manager in the West Indies, that is what happens. They walk around and just give orders. Do this, do this, that. Yes, that's what happened. Yeah, carry on, Athie.
I was going to say that my experiences, and I'm sure it's probably your experiences as well, that, you know, in every organization, even in the sports sector, even in steel band panyards, even in businesses, you know, we often look to the top for management.
Yeah.
But you know who's really keeping that business afloat? There's a level, sometimes middle to lower level.
Yes. That's the point.
Who just knows everything. Yeah. Nobody goes to them to ask for their opinion, you know. But they know something is happening, and they kind of, you know, they just get it done.
Yeah.
You know.
Look at a restaurant. Look at a restaurant.
Yeah, a restaurant being a good example too.
That's the best example I could tell.
But my question, my going forward would be, you know, in societies which are well managed, Singapore, Germany, etc., Norway, Denmark, they have taken those middle-level quiet skills and institutionalized them.
That's right.
And when you go to management training school, guess what you're learning? You are actually learning from the people on the floor who actually figured out how to make this thing happen. And that has been written up, and they do case studies, and they give you problems to solve. But there are people. The question though is, we often ignore, in our own wisdom, we ignore those people.
Yes.
The bus driver knows more about safety on the road than the police traffic officer, the commissioner of police. Because he's living it. He has to
his own life is at stake. That's right. His life is at stake.
So, you know, we have to think back to front.
But when they're having meetings about road safety, do you see any bus drivers in
the bus driver not there?
No,
the bus driver not there.
And if a bus driver happens by some accident to end up in that meeting, he's going to be asked, "What are you doing here?
Yes.
This is above your grade."
Yes.
Exactly.
You know, you stay out there, and when we come to a decision, we'll tell you
what to do, because pay grades is what makes this thing important. Your pay grade is too low.
Exactly.
You know, you're recognizable by your pay. And I'm saying this book because it's something I've watched. I mean, and I think working with the Irish really opened my eyes to a lot of what I'm saying here, because I was able to make the distinction between the two approaches to management. And some of it stunned me. I remember people coming to Digicel who, in the early days, especially when a lot of structure was not in place, everybody sat at a desk in a little cubicle style situation. And there were people who came to the company who were offered jobs. And when they realized that that was the case, they refused the job because they were coming to sit in an office separated by themselves. That was a demonstration of their position.
Power.
And those things woke me up, because I never, here's a competitive situation, new company, everybody wants to get in. You get offered a job. And when you realize that you are not going to get an office and a big desk, you say no. Those things woke me up a lot. And I could tell you about so many things. And it makes me understand why a lot of our businesses in the region could only get so far and cannot go to the next step. A lot of it is the management and leadership problems. That's it.
Yes. Now, also on our menu this evening, we wanted to look at whether or not elections could be managed by remote control.
By what?
Remote control.
You mean from another country?
Oh, yes.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Ask Uncle Donald. He just had his experience of the Russians managing his election.
They're trying to.
Laughing now because election by remote control.
Rachel is amused.
It's not as far-fetched as you think.
No, it is not as far-fetched as you think.
It's already happening.
Huh?
You think it's already happening?
We say a lot, give a lot of lip service to the fact that we have a right to vote. You know, it's your constitutional right, and our parents fought for this right for us to go out and vote. But more and more, we're coming to find out that your vote don't really mean anything.
Other people could determine what your vote should be for you.
Exactly, precisely so. But look at the situation even right now going on in St. Vincent with these elections, petitions. So you have an election, people go out to vote, and the election officials, they decide what they do with the ballots and how they're going to be treated.
What?
So, where is your right as a voter? Where is it?
I am saying this. Go ahead.
And once you go out and mark that paper and leave it, you have no further control over it.
For 5 years.
Exactly. You have no say in it. Look what's happening in St. Vincent right now. Why is it that all the voters can't come out and say, look, whether it's my party win or not, what went on shouldn't have went on, so we demand. It's not up to the voters, it's up to one man, the judge.
Exactly.
And if he say it good, it good. And if he say it not good, it not good. So when you talk about this right to vote and this right to determine and all of these rights that you like to talk about, where are they? When it comes to voting, do you really have any rights?
It is Kofi Annan who said that elections, and he spoke about the crisis of democracy, that many times elections are not determined by the people who put their ballots in the boxes. They can be determined before a person even walks up to the box, or even having walked up to the box. They can be determined by people after, having no bearing with what you wanted. And the point is about that is this, is that if that becomes a situation, that's endemic, this is where we're playing with the security and the safety and whatever else of our country. Because people will accept that for so long, you know. Because the next point he made is either we cause the ballot box to make the decision, or the decision, he says, will be made on the streets. And on the streets, he's talking about rioting and that kind of public disobedience. That's why it's important for us to protect that little institution that we have, that little ballot box.
And people don't see, because of party politics, people do not seem to realize that in our system of democracy, the only time you get to exercise it is during an election. You know, or in a referendum, which we have not yet learned how to properly handle referendum, so they don't work. You know? But because when you go out to vote, and we sit here all the time and say that when you have voted, you need to make demands of your elected officials. But these people, once they are elected, they behave like gods unto themselves. And even when you turn the country upside down, as in the case of Haiti, literally, they still sit there in office and say, we ain't going nowhere, we're not moving. You know, so the will of the people, which is supposed to translate to the vote, the will of the people becomes nothing. So where is your right? Where is all of this right you're talking about? If you went to the polls today and you vote, and whoever won the election, well, you win the election, and then next year or the year after that, the people decide that they don't want you, the people can't get rid of you. You just sit down there.
That's right. They can't do anything. They can't do anything.
So where is the people's right to choose a government?
Put another way, where's the will of the people?
But there are some other external actors that we need to be mindful of. I mean, there's this group of persons called political consultants, electoral consultants, who have cornered the market in our islands on giving guidance and strategizing and fundraising and so on for various parties, etc. And they are the silent decision makers. You hardly ever see them. You often do not hear them. And but they are the ones determining the issues, how the issues are going to be framed and tackled, who gets what money to do what, when, where, how, which radio stations are on, are off, etc., etc. And that kind of activity allows these characters to determine the outcome of the vote. There's another phenomenon that's unfolding before our very eyes. I haven't heard much talk about it, but it's becoming a very, very, very hot issue here in Dominica. And that is, we have three major migration streams ongoing in the Caribbean at this time. Venezuela, Haiti, and citizens by investment, passport buyers. What is beginning to unfold is that these people are now targeted and are being identified and given access to the voting process. They are given, in some cases, in our case, we have now the phenomenon of some Haitian brothers and sisters arriving from Haiti with Dominica passports. We have growing numbers of Venezuelans and others coming in. We have Russian citizens who've bought their passports and are in here with their Dominica passports. We have a voting list that has more names on it than the entire population of the country because it's never been cleaned. So all great granny and great pappy who have died, their names are still on that list. So these migrant voters are expected to now present themselves at the polling station and say, my name is Beverley Sinclair. And if there's nobody there who knows that Beverley has gone on to the happy hunting grounds, that person votes as Beverley Sinclair. So what we call a democratic elections process has been unraveled. And if it hasn't happened in all the islands yet, it is just a matter of time. The question before us is what we have now a democracy or a votocracy?
Votocracy.
It's more a votocracy. Because if you deconstruct the word democracy, there are two words, demo
people
and cracy. But demo means not just people, but people in motion. But that part of the democracy formula has been incised out, surgically removed, and the democracy they talk about is really the votocracy, which is going into that booth and voting, as opposed to sustaining a people in motion constantly and shaping the agenda. I'm afraid that our cavalier approach to these issues in the region has allowed us, our small size and the fact that we are, not one single landmass, has allowed us to sort of be easy prey for anybody. These people are not smart, They're just outsmarting us. So that makes us really foolish. And I really, it's a matter of grave concern, because in the case of the Haitian brothers and sisters, they're running away from a horrible situation. In the case of the Venezuelans, they too are running away from a horrible situation. So what do you say? What do you do? No? Do you do a Maduro on them? No. But then if they now become used as the cannon fodder for the next wave of autocracy, you see what happens. So I am really, really at the point where I see the democracy project collapsed and needing a major surgery and major rebuild. Other than that, I'm afraid we won't even recognize this place in another 5-10 years, maybe. So it's urgent. I guess that's my point. That not the fact that we're holding elections is not a vindication of our effort at building a democracy. And in fact, it's the opposite.
But that's what it is sold us today, that once we have election, we have a democracy. And that is why when people put up that facade, they can go behind that facade and do things that compromise what the facade is intended to show.
But again, where is that discussion in our region? I go to all the Caribbean news pages, the national level, the region. It's not there. It's not there.
Elections these days are to keep certain people in positions of authority. That's all it's about. So we now into an era where the prime ministers are introducing their family members into the government.
Exactly.
So that it can carry on. It's a monarchy now. Pass the crown onto your next, And we've seen it in
Antigua.
We've seen it in Antigua. You've seen it in
Vincent.
And you've seen it in Dominica now.
See it in Dominica. You've seen it in Grenada. So
in Grenada?
Yeah, the Prime Minister has his son in the Ministry of Finance as his advisor.
And the Foreign Minister has his daughter as a...
And the Foreign Minister has his daughter as an ambassador to China, I believe.
That's it.
Right.
That's exactly it.
Family,
le.
Yeah, man, yes.
I think what is happening.
That song has found its place.
Right. So when elections come around now, it's not about the people and what the people want, who the people want to represent them. Those elected no longer represent the people, they represent themselves and the family. Because they have to create this kind of dynasty that continues.
But Bev, it's the same people who give them that, because I remember when this first move was made in St. Vincent, when a couple friends came to blows, I said there's something fundamentally wrong. This is institutionalizing nepotism, and they couldn't see it. They could not see it.
It has been institutionalized so that we can sit here now and list out islands where it is happening.
And Uncle Donald is doing the same thing up there too, by Margaret.
Of course. It's a family business. Yeah.
Exactly.
Family business.
So elections now are about securing those dynasties. And that is why there is corruption and there's all kind of things going on in elections now, because we must win. We must have an election, but we must win. But why bother to have an election?
And Athie asks us to look at something that sometimes I don't think we give a lot of credence to. is the role of these election consultants. Because the elections we have these days with the big music and the giveaway, that was a consultant direction, you know. And it spread from one country to the next because it worked. Bringing the big music bands, you know, it was a consultant decision.
Jerry?
And they tried it yeah?
That's a valid point there, but there's another point being raised here on Facebook by somebody named Renewed Purpose. The person is saying technology has its good, but anything electronic can be hacked, including electronic ballot boxes. The cabal is using technology to invade all our privacy and will eventually try to control us through it.
84.
Renewed
But we
purpose.
don't have a lot of use of technology at the moment. Maybe we're heading that direction. Because I don't think we have a lot of technology. But I believe also that after what happened in the United States, that we're going to see much more strict encryption rules with respect to any elections. So what the Russians might have attempted might have worked for the good of all of us coming along the road.
Well, you know, I mean, I guess from the election, from the voting machines perspective, maybe. Certainly there's a rush here to now change the machines and update in places where they weren't. But a lot of states don't have the money to do that, so we may still find ourselves in the same. I think the biggest danger probably comes from information and how it's used and how it's played, particularly in social media and that kind of stuff, because it's becoming more and more difficult to distinguish what is truth and what is fake. Because sometimes, even if you when you see something, you have to literally go and search and research and check and fact check and just to make sure that what you're seeing is it's credible. And I think probably that's where the biggest battle will come.
No, the thing that frightened me out of the Cambridge Analytica thing is how they use propaganda. They do the research, they find out what are the fears of this group of people, and then they start to feed stories into that fear. That would force people to act in that is scary.
I mean, I think it has always been here.
Yeah, but it's more powerful now, Margaret. I agree.
But yeah, because you have the technology has made it easier. Yeah. Right. It has made the reach greater. And with the flick of a switch, basically, or button, you can get it done. I mean, it took you a longer time, but I mean, that has always been in play in terms of shaping the opinion, you know.
But let's not forget the technology of rum and saltfish politics is still very, very effective.
You're sure right about that.
That is what rules. When they take all those little boys riding those little bicycles and motorbikes and so on, and give each of them $5,000 to fly red.
And that is my argument.
What? You see, I like Dominica. Hey, Athie, I like Dominica, man. All your price high. I like that.
Of course. What?
Please.
We looking to spend close to $45 million.
I mean, you tell me again, $5,000 in Grenada, they're giving you a drink of rum.
No. The young boys, they don't.
I come in Dominica, man. That's how you play. Yeah.
They understand the value of their thing.
Yeah, man.
$5,000.
I'm not concerned about the technology because technology just is a wonderful thing that makes life go places you never dreamed of. My concern is about the institutions that cannot function because of corruption. That is my fear because there is nothing, no technological strategy you can put in place that can defeat a corrupt institution. And if those who manage our electoral processes are corrupt, and I'm not saying it with water anymore, like what I'm seeing coming out of those trials in St. Vincent, those people just corrupt. They're just plain corrupt. It doesn't matter what kind of technology is used. If people who are supposed to manage the systems, if the institutions are filled with corrupt people, technology can't help us, cannot. You can design your systems, put in all the fail-safe mechanisms, and all you need is one corrupt person to make it go haywire.
You're right, Bev. The problem is not corruption. The problem is corrupt people.
People.
Exactly.
Greedy people.
Precisely so.
Violent people. Evil people. You know, in other words, sure, if you're walking down the road, you can't point to corruption, but you can point to a corrupt person.
Of course.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have to get past just defining the problem as one of corruption. That's how the World Bank handles it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, is this corrupt people that are going to manipulate the technology at the end of the day.
Exactly.
That's what you get.
Exactly.
Yes?
And that's what you have to go after.
Yeah.
And it comes right back to where we started, that when it comes to the electoral process, it's about keeping the dynasty.
That's right.
Yeah.
So those who would like to see free and fair elections really have a fight to ensure that the corrupt people are kept out of the institutions that are supposed to manage these processes, so that at least we can have a fighting chance of something that can actually represent the people in a country and not just a few.
That's why you have to name and shame them constantly. Name and shame them. Because if you allow them to hide behind the noun corruption, they get away. They're slippery, But you have to make them. You have to really make them afraid to continue with this thing.
So,
well, folks, we've got 3 minutes on the clock. Any rounding up, any thoughts that anybody would like to share that they thought we left out of any part of the discussion?
I just want to follow up on something Athie was suggesting here. He says, you can't let these guys continue the way they're going. You got to name and shame them. What do you suggest, Athie? How do you go about doing that?
Excuse me? How do we go about that?
Come on. I mean, we've been complaining about the garbage that's going on in our islands, ad infinitum for a long, long time, right? And if anything, I see the pace accelerating. How do we bring this to an end?
Well, I really believe you have to do more of what we are doing now. I believe the naming and the shaming is not just Tom, Dick, Harry's name. It's about you name the person and you work on them to the point where they either understand what they're doing is evil and stop it, or if they're going to do it, they're going to have to face the consequences. What are the consequences? The consequences ultimately and cannot depend on the court system, has to depend on the street courts. People have to know that after a while, people are just going to confront them physically. That's the only way. That's the only language those people understand.
That's what I was saying.
That's the only language, because that's what they're doing. That's the world they know is the collection of physical wealth. That's their world. So anything that can kind of challenge that, threaten that, whether it be a crowd, whether it be a radio program, whether it be an article in the newspapers, whether it be like Lennox Linton going to speak to the Secretary General of the OAS and telling him, here are the names of the people who have violated the process, who are blocking the process. That's part of the naming and shaming. In other words, you block them at every intersection. So no matter where they go, they are confronted by somebody who knows, oh, Bever, That's the lady. You see, like Mandweke, that woman from Nigeria, she can go nowhere.
Exactly.
Here's a chilling note.
We're right on the nose, guy. Right on the nose. And before George throws us off, let me take this opportunity to say thank you very much once again.
George never threw us off.
Hold on. Before I throw you guys off,
He say hold on.
Good night.
here's a chilling note on which to end tonight's program. Renewed Purpose here says, Grenada is so corrupted that the PM has a say when it comes to giving loans at the banks, like
Really?
the CDB.
Really?
If that,
know that.
And they on a program, I will call you back.
if that isn't chilling, I don't know. Thanks a lot, guys.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Have a good night, y'all.
Good night, all.
Ciao.
Bye-bye, Rachel.
Cheers.
Night, everyone.